I am so delighted to have a good friend. Her name is Elvira Guzman, and she is the president and CEO of Elvira Guzman PR, which is a company that represents artists, entrepreneurs, athletes, and many more. For the last few years, Elvira has been not only an entrepreneur, but also an advocate of Latino women in leadership. She also went to Gladstone High School and a graduate of USC. So welcome, Elvira. So nice to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Over the last few years, Elvira, I know that we have had sort of interactions here and there through USC primarily. Mm-hmm. So when you were at USC, tell me a little bit about, before we get into the show, tell me a little bit about kind of what you learned most about your time there at SC.
I would have to say time management, because I had two jobs. I worked at the radio station, 100.3 The Beat, and I was also working for Steve Harvey's production company. And I wanted to graduate soon so that I could start making the same amount of money the colleagues were making. So I was trying to speed through it. And so I learned very quickly how to write papers fast, how to get to class in record time, and how to find the best parking, or how to talk people into getting you the best parking so that way you wouldn't be late. Yeah, and to be responsible. I knew then that it didn't matter if my parents asked me how school was going. It mattered to me. Education is very expensive, and it's something that I felt very privileged to have. And so when you're in those classrooms, you could kind of feel the essence of there's the best of the country in that room, and you want to be number one. So I didn't want to let anything be an obstacle. So if I needed to buy school books, I needed to have a job in order to pay for that. So I made it happen, and I never complained.
It is so powerful, and I can see that now that continues in your life even to this day.
Yes.
So now here at the Trig Podcast of Joy, Elvira, I like to ask my guests three things. What is your adventure? How have you found grace in the middle of crisis? And then third is, who do you love? So let me ask you, what is the adventure that God has given you?
I would have to say it's been my most difficult obstacle, but it's also been the reason that I have a purpose, or that I know that I have one. It was when my parents were incarcerated when I was 14 years old, because I had everything before that. I never knew what a bill was. I never knew what it was like to have to get money to eat. But that was my adventure. And now looking back, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it taught me how to be light on my feet and how not to let anything knock me down, despite how hard you think the obstacle may be. We were just talking about David and Goliath, that story. That's how I felt. I felt like this life was Goliath, and it was going to eat me up. And the only thing I had was this one rock, which to me was my God. And that's how I was able to overcome that. But yeah, it was quite the adventure. I remember having to get a job immediately to work at a pizza restaurant, which taught me humility, because before there was someone who would cook me my meals, and now I had to answer to people of, you didn't get this fast enough, or I didn't like this, and, telling me, berating things for things I didn't even cook. I was just the cash register girl. So having those experiences in my life really set me up to be a business owner, set me up to be a motivational speaker, set me up to be able to give so much to others. So looking back, I'm very happy about what happened, because now I could be a voice to uplift others.
Yeah. And in some ways, that adventure, along with that crisis, really formed you and shaped you to who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that partying is not fun all the time. I remember as soon as my parents turned themselves in, I was like, yes, it's time to party. I'm going to go to Mexico, Rosarito. And that's when it was really hot over there. So I was like taking cars. And before I knew it, I was like, what am I doing with my life?
Right.
This isn't what I want. So within 6 months, I shaped up and I started working. I started getting straight A's. I started playing sports. I started to look up people who had made it from my communities. And I said, okay, well, it's either going to be sports or education. And
right,
so,
usually, right? Those
exactly. And so because of that, sports kept me off the streets. So as soon as school was over, usually people hang out outside to see about fights or who's going to tell this person that. I didn't have that ability. I had to be in the gym working out. And when I wasn't doing that, I was studying in between my breaks at, the pizza restaurant. So it taught me responsibility, humility, and just really to keep your head on straight, because I knew where I wanted to be, despite where I was.
Yeah. Now, tell me a little bit more about some of the fun things that I know you enjoy. Traveling, and I also know you like to meet people and to enjoy the ocean. Tell me about traveling. What has that taught you? And then about the ocean.
Traveling is the most amazing thing that anyone could do because you realize what others go through in order to get through life. One memory that sticks out in my mind is the second time I went to the Dominican Republic. Usually you stay on your nice resorts and they have everything provided for you so you don't have to leave. But I wanted to go meet the people that live there. So we went to a local beach and I seen everybody happy, listening to music. They had their cacerolas full of beans and rice. And I wanted to talk to someone who lived there. So I asked if I could ask them a few questions, that I was a political science researcher. And so I was like, what's the average salary of someone who lives here? I said, what do you guys value? And I was so surprised that their average salary is in the hundreds. And usually people who you can't make that living a day or a week because there's so much to live here. And they said, despite how people are in the U.S., we appreciate family first. We appreciate health. And as long as we have that, we have everything.
Right.
Which here you'll see people eating by themselves at restaurants. They're shopping by themselves. They don't really have that sense of family or union. And it's very, very different. So traveling allows you the opportunity to see how others live and to kind of check yourself and say, okay, I need to do better in this area. I need to switch it up. I need to have a little more balance. So that's what it's really helped me do.
That is so crazy. So when you travel, you really have, like people say, learn to appreciate what we have.
Yes.
And learn to also see how people live and yet how it seems like so many times people have joy, even though they have so, quote, few things.
Yeah.
What about the ocean? Tell me about the ocean.
I love the ocean. It's a place for me to connect. I go there every Sunday. I usually feed the birds with my mom, and then I go off and I pray and I meditate, and I'm just in one with God. I talk to God. I thank God for everything that's happened during the week. I thank God for the bad things that have happened because I know that there's a message within them that I'm yet to know. I like to reassess my life. I like to pray for others. If I know that a sister or a brother or a family member is going through something or a client, then I make sure I send another little special prayer for them. So it's really a place that makes me feel good.
That's right. You connect with God. And we were saying just a little bit ago how small you can feel inside of the ocean.
Absolutely. When I'm walking towards the ocean, my prayers are already starting. And the first thought that comes to my mind is, this was here, I don't know how many years before me, and it's going to be here, I don't know how many years after me. And I'm just like a little piece of sand, and I need to do my part. And it's a constant reminder that, who am I? I just need to surrender and obey. And as long as I do that, then all will be provided for me. Yes. And all has. I've been very, very fortunate in my life.
Yeah. So glad for that. Now, I want to go back to the story of the crisis that you went through in life. And I often find that there are almost like angels or guiding angels, we call them, or those moments of grace that help people through those crises. And, I want to especially tell our viewers that those things happen even today. It doesn't happen to just special people. It's not like some crazy out-of-body thing. Those moments of grace happen all the time. Tell us a little bit about the graces, meaning those magical moments that happen in the middle of the crisis.
The first one that comes to mind is the morning after I tried to take my life. I was done with what I thought was my life because the pain felt too much. And I remember, I'm not too sure what parent I had gone to visit, but I cried the whole way back, and it was several hours. And when I got home to a house, the lights were off, my grandma had just passed away, just a lot of things. I just wanted to end it all. I didn't see the light. And so when I woke up, I heard a gospel song. And then I was like, what is this? I usually listen to hip hop. And then all of a sudden I heard a man's voice, and it was Steve Harvey's voice. And he said exactly what I needed to hear in that moment in order to continue to want to live. And he said, if God woke you up this morning, you should be glad about it. If he put breath in your lungs, you should be glad about it. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And after he said those words, he played another gospel song. But before that, he said a message that is, I knew that something was there. and that I was supposed to work with that man, meet that man, do something with that man that gave me hope. And that was the first instance. And we all know that weeks later, I met him. Months later, he offered me a job, and I became his right-hand person. And I was very privileged to listen to that message every single morning at that radio station. So for the 9 years, I was always the person to his right-hand side, listening to that and then ready to give him his notes for the day. So it was like having church every day. So how can I ever have a down moment when I have someone uplifting me as soon as I get to work? So that was the first moment of grace when I knew, okay, there's something bigger than this experience. And it's not about me. It's about what I'm supposed to do for God in this earth. And so that's when I had the first moment.
That is beautiful. Tell us about what has Adventure plus Crisis meant to you, and specifically, who and what do you love?
It's allowed me to have a closer relationship to God. And what I realized throughout my journey is that I was always looking for something to fill the hole I thought I had. First, it was like, oh, it's my parents that are gone. I miss them. Then it was my first breakup. Oh, if I just had him, it would fill my heart. Then when something did happen that I wanted to work, oh, if I just had that contract. But in essence, I was looking for something that I always had, which was God. And I just needed to turn the switch on. And now that I turned the switch on, I feel complete on my worst day because I know that I have exactly what I need because God is inside of me. And that's the missing piece of the puzzle that I didn't have activated. So what my life journey has taught me is to just acknowledge that God walks with us every single day. Whereas before I thought that God was too busy with other people or that I'm not good enough for God to help me, which is not true.
Yeah, so you've discovered that switch that he is with you daily.
Every day.
Yeah, no matter how you feel, how good or bad you may feel, he's faithful to you.
And as such, we need to acknowledge God. So when I wake up, I pray. When I'm in the car, I turn on the music, I pray because God is sitting right there. Right before a meeting, I pray because God is helping me in preparation. I say, God, just please take over me. Say whatever it is that you want to be told. So as long as you know that you walk with God, that God resides inside of you, that's the biggest blessing that I feel anyone could realize after their adventure and their crisis and all of their obstacles.
That's right. Now, I know also that you're an advocate for women in leadership, especially Latino women. You're a speaker, an author. You've written a book. You help people all the time. Even just here today, you had people that you were loving, helping them out. Tell us, what is that like? What is inside of you that you want to help these athletes, these entrepreneurs, the book that you've written, young people, etc.?
I feel very privileged. That's the word that comes to my mind, to have the ability and knowledge and wisdom and obstacles underneath my belt to be able to give an array of people advice. Had I not gone through what I went through, or my health scares, or issues with my siblings or family members, or fights that I was in, I wouldn't have nothing to give. And so I just feel very privileged to be able to be in this place of help. And I think the reason that this is my purpose is because the darkest time, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where my life might end up. I remember thinking like, gosh, I just hope I turn 25 one day, or if I could just make it to 21 or 18, that would be great, because days seemed extremely long for me back then. And I thought that I was never going to make it.
Right.
So just to have that awareness is a blessing. I feel very, very privileged.
And it comes across. Now, tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote. I know it's called Your Blueprint. Tell us, why was that written? And most of all, what was the process of writing it like?
Wow, this is my life's work. This is the best thing I've done in my entire life. When I wrote this, I was 29 years old, and I was on a trip to the Dominican Republic by myself because I was editing another book that I already had been editing, not writing, for 6 months, and I just couldn't finish. And I couldn't finish because whenever I'm in my writing sessions, people will call me, they'll text me, they'll email me, my clients, like, can you come meet with me? And it breaks my focus. Yeah. And so I could edit for, let's say I give myself 4 hours, it could turn into 3 weeks because I don't have just I don't have my focus on it. So I said, if I go to the Dominican Republic by myself, there'll be nobody talking to me. I won't know anybody over there. I could put on my earphones, get my laptop, and I could do it.
Right.
Well, when I got to DR, God had a different plan.
Oh.
When I opened up my laptop and I had it on the document to get started editing, because I had dog-eared all of the pages I needed to fix, I felt a message within me that said, start a new document. And by this time, I'm 29. I've already had a good relationship with God. I know what God's voice sounds like. And I'm like, no, I've been working on this forever. I didn't take this trip for nothing. Like, I need to focus on this. And God was like, Elvira, start on a new page now. And so I know that voice too. So I was like, oh, shoot, I better listen. And so I started on a new page. And within 2 days, I had written 114 pages.
In 2 days.
In 2 days. And it was done. And the first day I wrote 70. The second day I wrote 54. And I was like, God was like, okay, you're done. And I was like, what do you mean? I need to write 70 today too, right? Or what's, and God was like, no, you're done. And I was like, okay, cool. So at that point I was like, okay, well then I can enjoy this little vacation because it only took me 2 days. And so that's how this book came about. And when I read it back, I needed to hear the messages that were in the book. I needed to be released because up until this point, there are many people I didn't tell my true story to, or what I was really going through, or what my life was like before they knew the Elvira that worked for Steve Harvey. And so it was very, very difficult for me to release all those things, but it's been the best thing that I have done. And what makes me so happy is that when I go to juvenile halls, girls that are 13, 14, they're able to read this within a week. They're able to comprehend it. They don't have to Google the words and say, what does this mean? Because there's a lot of authors that they want to write all this fancy jargon, but we have to realize that the majority of people don't understand that type of talk.
Right.
And so I'm very, very proud of this. And I know that it's helped a lot of people, especially me. And so I continue to speak at different events, and I use my book as a starting point. There's chapters on from your pain comes your purpose, or who broke your heart, how to regain your heart, how to be back at one, I have a chapter on God doesn't care how you get back to God as long as you get back. And there's tons of different religions. It doesn't matter. Pick one. So there's a lot of messages in here that I'm very, very proud of. One thing that I've learned is to give back. And a lot of people think that you have to have money to give back. No, a lot of times it's time, a secret prayer. Like when I was driving here this morning, I seen a man walking and with a cane because he's obviously blind. You say a little prayer for that person and say, Lord, please have him see again, or make his journey not as hard. Have people to help him. Just any little prayer that you could say for another person, I believe that we should do.
Now, when you're doing all these different things that you do, how does your love for people help you with the hustle? With all that you have to do to answer phone calls and keep up with so many people, how does your inner life connect to the pace that you have to keep to help so many people?
Well, number one is if I'm going to work with you, you have to be awake in God. And you have to want to give back. And if you don't do that, then I'm not going to represent you, because my life has to be aligned now. Before, I used to represent people that were from a certain lifestyle if they wanted, because I didn't want to get in their business, and then mine would be this. But now I'm at a place where everything has to be aligned, because if I don't feel that you're going to use the money that I'm helping you make to give back, then I'm not going to help you make it. I'm going to help somebody else make it that will give back, because I have that privilege, because it's all about contacts, and those are mine.
That is so awesome. Well, in this last segment, Elvira, I want to have a little fun, because again, this is the Trig Podcast of Joy and GOZO TV. So when we come back in a few minutes, I'm going to do some jokes and just laugh, because they say that laughter is the best medicine. So we'll be right back. So delighted, Elvira, to have had you here for these brief moments. Thank you again for being here. Now, what I wanted to wrap up with are some jokes, because as I said, this is the Trig Podcast of Joy in GOZO TV, and GOZO means joy in Spanish. So I have some jokes for you here. Now, we're both into working with professional people, and so these are all profession jokes. Where do astronauts leave their spaceships? Where do astronauts leave their spaceships?
In the sky?
Any thoughts? AstroTurf? At parking meteors. Only one more, okay? One more, I guess. Which astronaut wears the biggest helmet?
The one with the biggest head?
Yes, that's right. The one with the biggest head. The one with the biggest head. And that is the GOZO joke of the day.
Yay, I got one.
I know. Those are not as easy as you think.
I was starting to feel pretty bad about myself.
I know. Well, you're great. Elvira, a true delight to have you with me. Thank you so much. I want to just come across and shake your hand.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiration. Now, how can people get a hold of you if they want you to represent them, if they just want to just hang out with you and have you work with them? How can they get a hold of you?
Please check out our website. It's www.lvgpr.com. We have our packages on there. And if you'd like to follow us on social media to see what kind of media we get for our clients, it's lv-pr.com.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Elvira, for your awesome interview. Thank you again, Gil, and everybody here. Chelsea, glad to have you. Remember, everybody, that every day, Monday through Friday, we're here at GOZO TV. Remember that though there's pain in the night, GOZO comes in the morning. Have a great rest of this day. Have a great rest of this week. Have a great rest of this fall, and I will see you next time. Adios.